Hello everyone, I am the omniscient narrator. My name is Sarah, and today I am doing a book review of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, this book review will primarily have no spoilers, but there will be one major spoiler at the end, and when that time has come, you will see this pop up on your screen, and there will also be a timestamp telling you what to flip, what time to fast forward to if you want to skip the major spoiler. There will also be like little mini spoilers throughout it, but it's nothing really important. It's just little things like, oh, there's a time skip, things like that. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this novel. So we have this man, Dorian Gray. He's young. He's in like his early 20s, and he's just gorgeous. He's kind of innocent. He's in the aristocracy, and yeah, he meets this man, Basil. Not entirely sure how to say it. I'm going Basil. Basil Howard. He is a painter, and Dorian has basically become his muse. And so he's working on this gorgeous painting of Dorian. It's a portrait. And while he is nearing the end of this painting, Basil introduces Dorian to this man named Lord Henry, also known as Harry. I'm going to try to refer to him as Harry throughout this video. So Harry has all these theories about life and how someone should live their life. And he shares these with Dorian, and Dorian is immediately interested in these and starts using these theories throughout his life, and him and Harry become great close friends right away. When Basil finishes the portrait of Dorian, Dorian makes the wish that he could forever look as young and beautiful as he does in that moment, and that portrait could bear all of the physical burdens of his sins and of his aging. Little does he know, his wish comes true. And so the rest of this novel is basically seeing how Dorian changes and how this changes the portrait and how the portrait thus affects Dorian. It's really interesting. I'm going to first start with my likes. There are quite lesser likes than there are dislikes, but I feel like these likes really do outweigh the dislikes. So my first like is the writing style. I would very rarely comment on someone's writing style, but Oscar Wilde's writing style is absolutely gorgeous. I love it so much. It is just so pretty. So if you haven't read anything by Oscar Wilde, please do, because you need it in your life. The other major thing that I really liked about this novel was how Dorian isn't really seen as a good guy. He's kind of like the villain of this novel, but he's also the protagonist. Remember, protagonist does not equal good guy, and antagonist does not equal bad guy. So you can have a protagonist be the villain. It just doesn't happen a lot, and it does happen in this case, though. So yeah, I just really like when authors do that, when they really bring out the flaws of their characters, because it makes them seem much more realistic and not just so much like, I'm a hero, I'm a good guy. So I really liked that about this novel. So now for my dislikes. My first dislike doesn't really have to do with the novel at all, but more so just about this physical copy of it. So the picture of the cover has Dorian in the portrait. And this is how I expected Dorian to look going into this novel, but when you read it, you actually learn that he has like golden hair. This one, he has black hair. Nothing against Oscar Wilde for this, nothing against whoever created this cover. It is an absolutely gorgeous cover. It's just not accurate, and so I just wanted to comment on that. So my next critique has to do with the beginning, when we are introduced to both Basil and to Harry. So you are introduced to two main important characters right from the beginning at the same time. Now in today's writing, you would be told, if you were doing this, do not have these characters have names that start with the same letter, but Oscar Wilde did that. So we have Lord Henry, also known as Harry, and we also have Basil Howard, and it's really confusing for the reader at the beginning of like, okay, well, who's who? Let me straighten it out for you right now. Basil equals Howard, Lord Henry equals Harry. Harry does not equal Howard, and Lord Henry does not equal Howard. I was really confused about that at the beginning. As I read more, I was able to like figure out who's who. I was able to figure out, okay, this man's in the aristocracy, this man is the painter, and these two people are not the same. So that was really confusing for me at the beginning, so I just wanted to say, clear that up for anyone who's gonna possibly read this after watching this video, because it's kind of confusing, and in today's writing, you would be told to change at least one of those characters' names. And also possibly not to keep switching what they're referred to as by throughout the novel, just stick to one. My next critique also has to do with something that would not fly in today's writing, and that is chapter 11. So from chapter 10 to chapter 12, we have this huge time gap that happens, and chapter 11 is really that time period between it, and it's just like basic like, oh yes, he had many different hobbies, which is great. Yes, I'm glad to know that. I'm even glad to know what some of these hobbies are, but Oscar Wilde goes into paragraphs and paragraphs of details about each and every one of these hobbies, and it is so boring. It adds nothing to overall standing in the novel. Just knowing that, like, yes, he was interested in this specific thing, perfect. It helped me, like, once after that chapter, but it did nothing except bore me, and it made it really hard for me to get through that chapter. But don't get me wrong, because chapter 11 is really important, because it really does tie those two times together at the beginning and the end of the chapter. The middle of the chapter, which makes the bulk of it, really doesn't do that. So yeah, I encourage you to read chapter 11, but you have to just push through, because after that, I could not stop reading it, and it was just so good. And one final thing I want to critique about this novel still has to do with the writing style, which may be like, how? Because you just, like, raved about it. Well, it is very dense. The way this is written is very dense. I would compare it to Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury and Insurrecto by Gina Apostle. I would kind of group these all together, as in, it is very dense writing and very hard to understand, and you just need to understand. Don't understand every single little detail, because it is not important. Like, all of Lord Henry's or Harry's theories, you don't need to understand them at all. And they're really complicated sounding, and so you can get really bogged down on that, but that is not important to your overall standing of the novel. So just push through it and just understand that, hey, it's okay, you don't fully understand everything that's happening. As long as you get the basic big ideas, you're fine. But yeah, so this final comment is actually a like, but this is my major spoiler I have for this novel, so if you do not want to hear this, please skip to the timestamp that is currently on your screen. So, the thing I really liked about this was the ending. The ending blew me away. I have not been able to read another book after this yet, a few days later, because this book has left me in, like, a book coma, particularly because of that ending. The ending saved it all for me. And so I'm in the last, like, 2 pages, and I'm like, the only way this can reasonably, like, end is if Dorian dies. But I see no way of him dying, because for a few chapters we're like, oh, this man's gonna kill him. And I really liked how that was brought up, by the way. How that man was brought up was gorgeous, and how it connected to the beginning of the novel, I just loved it. Wilde actually, like, foreshadowed it, like, a page or two before, like, it's revealed, and I'm like, I was suspecting it. It was just so gorgeously done, and I love it. But yeah, so I'm like, last 2 pages, and I'm like, how is this gonna end? I see no reasonable way for this to end except him dying, but I don't know how he's gonna die, because him committing suicide didn't seem reasonable, and there was nobody else who seemed like they were gonna kill him. But at this point, Dorian's like, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna become a better man, but I didn't necessarily believe him, because I feel like he'd said things like that throughout the novel, and he just never really followed through with that. But he does something he'd never done before, and that is he goes to stab the portrait, and when he does that, it actually kills himself. And I saw that, and I was stunned. I read it, and I was stunned. I was like, yes, this is what needed to happen. This is perfect. This is the only way this novel could have ended. But then Oscar Wilde, like, inserted, like, he slided over, like, one last puzzle piece. He's like, you have one more puzzle piece, and I didn't know I was missing it until I read it, and it was the, when the servants came up and found Dorian's body, they saw what was in the portrait. So they saw, someone who physically looked older. He was in, like, his, like, late 30s or early 40s, I think, at this point, and so he has wrinkles from this older age, and he has just, like, the weight of his sins, like, showing on his face and on his body, and then the portrait is just how it looked the day it was painted. This young man in his early 20s who is beautiful and innocent, and that just stunned me. I was not expecting that, but it just fits so perfectly, and I just absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's Picture of Dorian Gray. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I'm actually very generous about giving 5 stars. Most things I read, I give 5 stars, but this one got 4 just because of chapter 11. But everything after chapter 11 totally made up for it, especially the way it ended, like the last, like, 2 or 3 pages totally made up for it. But yeah, if you haven't read this, I recommend you go give it a try. It is really good, especially if you want to get into classics. I've been wanting to get into more classics, and I was really scared of getting into this. That would be, like, really old English, and I really struggle to understand. But even though this was written, like, at the end of it was written in 1890, is when it says on the back for Oscar Wilde's file. It says it was published in 1890. Even though it was written in 1890, I was still very well able to understand it. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. So go give it a read if you haven't, and if you have, let me know in the comments down below some of your thoughts. Yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope you have all have a good day. Bye!